All I know is that what Paul said, that Adam sinned and we've all sinned. Adam went wrong. That's very clear. And every human being goes wrong. How that works mechanically, who cares? I think we have to resist sin, that's quite clear. But sometimes Calvinism is obsessed with that. We know that Jesus did not sin. He could have sinned, of course. He resisted temptation. We're supposed to do that too. But Paul doesn't go into the detail of that. I don't think he's worried about it. He accepts that Adam sinned, we know that. All men have sinned and come short of their destiny in the glory of God, to be glorified, immortal beings. That's the destiny of man. We're not glorified, of course, now. We are to be glorified in the future resurrection, or if we're alive, at the same time at the second coming, caught up to meet the returning Lord. That's when immortality is conferred. You don't have it now. You have a down payment on that future immortality by the Spirit, which you accept by obeying the gospel. You can't earn immortality, that's quite clear, but nor can you get it by disobedience. And so Hebrews 5:9 needs to be prominent in all Bible studies, that salvation is given to those who obey Jesus. Let's not argue about that. There's nothing to argue about. You can't earn it, but you can't get it by disobedience either. So in response to the gospel of the kingdom, we are to obey what Jesus taught us to do. And of course, the idea of enforced celibacy, that all clergy had to be celibate, was a disaster. Because I think of their fear of sex being the ultimate sin, maybe. There was a sort of super purity. But that's to make people more righteous than Jesus. Jesus never, ever required that. It's a horrible legalism, and that's the great danger, that you make up rules, like a total absence of alcohol. If that's your choice, that's fine. But to condemn people because they have a little wine occasionally is this super example of being more righteous than Jesus. Some translations have even fudged the text there in 1 Timothy, where Paul said that the elder in the church, the pastor, supervisor, bishop, whatever you like to call him, should not be given to much wine. He never said he shouldn't have any wine. That's absurd. You go to Europe and you say you're a Christian, you don't touch alcohol in any form, you're likely to make a very bad impression, because even in Britain, where 5% of people go to church regularly, they're going to be hatched, matched, and dispatched. They know that Jesus turned water into alcohol. But some people manage to create an argument out of that. And that really is quite unnecessary and presents a very poor face for the faith to those who are not part of the Christian faith. Yeah. Jesus was very angry with that sort of thing. That's where he overturned the tables. And he said, you've made the house of God, which should be a house of prayer for all nations, you've turned it into a den of bandits. Not just thieves, but bandits. That's very, very wrong. That prompted, of course, Luther rightly to say, enough is enough. Now, let's not judge other people more severely than ourselves. That's very important. But on the other hand, surely we can see the difference between that system. We've got to be Bereans, humble enough to get advice from other people, of course, but we don't need a clergy that put the laity under guardians, as Harnack said very well, and then the laity had to pay these experts to give them these mysterious doctrines.
We're born into a world that's sinful, and we learn how to sin very early on, but it's the act of creation or begetting or the producing of a human being is not sinful in itself, of course. That's just nonsense. The creative act of producing human beings is not sinful. But yes, the world is sinful. The devil is the god of this age, and we learn how to sin. But Paul makes nothing of this. That's enough. You don't need more than that. I know that in me dwells no good thing, Paul said. That's enough. In my flesh, as to say, my unconverted me, the unconverted part of me that lingers on, despite the opposite power of the Spirit that Christians must have. Paul makes no fuss of that. We know that that's true, and we are tempted on every side, and Jesus was likewise, but he was not sinful. We do make mistakes, of course. We do sin. Nobody is sinless this side of the resurrection. But I don't think one needs to say more than the Bible does, and it's very brief. It's enough. It's quite clear that the human heart is deceitful, above all things twisted. We learn this very early on, and really I think that's quite enough. The original sin doctrine caused all sorts of problems because it very soon developed into the idea that reproducing children was itself sinful somehow. We don't need any of that. So stay with the very few verses that deal with this and recognize, as Paul said, I know that in me, that's to say, he said, in my flesh, the unconverted part of me, no good thing dwells. That's it. That's enough.